Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive right into the anatomy of a haunting. We're breaking down this terrifying centuries-old regional folktale about a monstrous deception. And honestly, it perfectly captures how ancient stories take our most basic human needs and just completely weaponize them against us. You really have to wonder, why do certain stories survive for hundreds of years? Well, it's because they tap into vulnerabilities we all share. If you have ever found yourself absolutely exhausted, standing alone in the dark, and genuinely tempted to just take the easy way out, then this deep dive into the source material is going to be incredibly revealing for you.
Just listen to this promise for a second. I will quench your thirst forever. Now that is the core trap of our entire story. It's an offer made to two exhausted friends who are absolutely hopelessly desperate for water. If you're dehydrated and exhausted, that sounds literally like salvation, right? But within the context of this folktale, this promise isn't some nice gesture. It is a meticulously crafted snare. It specifically targets the very base of human needs, which is survival. Because when you're deprived of something essential, like water, your judgment completely clouds over. And that is exactly the blind spot this folklore preys upon.
Section 1. The price of a shortcut, desperation in the dark.
Okay, so to truly understand how the tear in this story builds so incredibly well, we first need to look at the agonizingly relatable setup of our two main guys, Madhav and Ramesh. Picture this, ticking clock. It's 10:30 at night, and they're just walking home after a brutal, back-breaking day of city labor. We are talking about that bone-deep fatigue where literally every single step feels like you're dragging weights. By 11 p.m., they hit their village border, but they realize a really harsh reality. There isn't a single drop of water waiting for them at home. Now, normally, they'd take a safe but ridiculously long walk to a neighboring village. That trek would keep them out until 2 a.m. just to fill 2 buckets of water. But by midnight, the exhaustion just totally wins. They make the fatal, actually, let's call it what it is, the classic human mistake of risking a forbidden shortcut to a moss-covered, notoriously dry stone well. It's extreme physical drain leading straight to a highly questionable decision.
Moving on to Section 2. The Stranger in the Dark, a deceptive offer.
So, they arrive at this abandoned, stone-dry well, and the narrative introduces the main catalyst. Out of the pitch-black forest, some unknown guy just steps out holding an old iron bucket. He tells them he knows a secret, never-ending water source hidden deep in the trees. But what Madhav and Ramesh don't realize is that their sheer desperation has actually summoned a Chalava. What's a Chalava? It's a shape-shifting entity in regional folklore that is perfectly adapted to prey on exhausted travelers. I mean, think about it. Why do cultures all around the globe invent shapeshifters? Because our greatest fears are almost always disguised as our deepest desires. The Chalava uses the exact thing they want most, water, as the ultimate bait. And the friends, completely blinded by their thirst and the promise of a quick fix, agree to follow the stranger into the dense woods.
Section 3. Clues of the Chalava, the unseen horror. You know how the best folklore builds terror before the monster actually reveals itself? It drops these subtle, really terrifying little hints. The horror doesn't just jump out at you, it creeps in. On the surface, this guy is just a helpful, thirsty traveler from a neighboring village. But as they walk deeper into the woods, and get this, the sound of the cricket starts to sound eerily like weeping. Reality begins to warp. Ramesh starts noticing these horrific details. The stranger's footsteps, they are making absolutely no sound on the dry leaves. He kind of seems to float just above the uneven ground rather than actually walk on it. And the most terrifying detail of all? Under the pale moonlight, the stranger casts absolutely no shadow. These details are so expertly woven into the source material, it just escalates that feeling of uncanny dread, signaling to your subconscious that something is deeply, deeply wrong right before the climax hits.
Section 4. The Deadly Forest Chase, the Reveal.
All right, so they finally reach the supposedly secret well, and the vibe violently shifts. The air drops to freezing cold, and the well is just pumping out this rotting, foul stench. There is zero water inside. It's just a pitch-black abyss. The stranger stops, and then the pacing of the story just completely explodes from quiet dread into pure, unadulterated panic. The man lets out this bizarre, non-human laughter that echoes through the trees. Right before their eyes, he vanishes into thick smoke, and in his place, a terrifying witch appears. Picture this. She's wearing a blood-red sari. Her eyes are glowing like burning red coals in the dark, and her hair is literally writhing and hissing in the wind like snakes. She taunts them, demanding they enter the well so she can quench their thirst forever.
Obviously, Madhav and Ramesh drop absolutely everything and just run for their lives.
This chase really highlights the true terror of the Chalava. It's not just a physical threat. We are dealing with a highly sophisticated psychological predator here. First, it lured them in by exploiting their physical thirst. Then, as they're frantically sprinting through the thorns and the brush, it actively induces mental panic. You see this a lot in folklore. Predators using omnidirectional sounds. Why? To cause total cognitive overload. It throws its terrifying laughter from all sides, left, right, above them in the trees, making it feel omnipresent and triggering a massive fight-or-flight response. It even drops from the branches of a banyan tree, turning to smoke right before it hits the ground, completely disorienting them. It is systematically breaking down their minds to make them easier to consume.
Which brings us to Section 5, an illusion of hope weaponizing love. Just when their lungs are burning and they feel like they absolutely cannot take another single step, the Chalava deploys its dirtiest trick yet. It weaponizes their own hope. Through the dark, they spot a glowing light. It's a small, comforting little hut, and sitting outside is a woman who looks exactly like Madhav's wife, Nilima. Her voice is soft, it's inviting, and she calls out, "You lost your way, right? I came looking for you. Drink this water." She hands them a cool, inviting clay pot. For a split second, the relief is just overwhelming. The nightmare seems over. And this right here is a profound psychological insight from the folktale. The most dangerous traps in life don't actually look like monsters. They look exactly like salvation. So Ramesh is just utterly blinded by his thirst, and he reaches out for that cool clay pot. But Madhav notices something eerily dark about the inside of the pot, and he suddenly realizes it's a horrific trap. He screams at Ramesh to stop, literally grabs him and violently pulls him back just a fraction of a second before he touches the water. The second that deception is broken, the illusion of his wife and the glowing hut instantly vanish into thin smoke. Boom, gone, and the monster is right there in front of them again, shrieking and absolutely furious that its ultimate trap just failed.
Section 6. The curse lingers on. The aftermath.
They're running blindly once more, hearts pounding out of their chests until they finally break into a clearing and hear real voices. This time, it's the actual Nilima, and she's with a bunch of villagers wielding torches. The sudden burst of harsh firelight and the crowd finally shatters the darkness, and it forces the entity to retreat back into the shadows. But look, escaping with your life does not mean escaping the nightmare. The survivors are physically safe, sure, but they are deeply traumatized, pale, and completely empty-handed. Their buckets are long gone. The monster, meanwhile, it's just waiting out there in the forest. This folktale serves as a brilliant, haunting metaphor for PTSD and lingering trauma. The experience lingered so heavily that when Madhav finally reaches the supposed safety of his own courtyard, he actually hears a phantom voice in the wind whispering his name, taunting him to come back into the woods and fetch his bucket. The Chalava didn't just hunt them, it infected their minds.
0. That is the exact number of times Madhav and Ramesh ever took a shortcut again. After that night, I don't care how bone-tired they were or how deep their thirst was, they preferred to walk until 3 a.m. on the safe, crowded path rather than ever face the monster in the woods again. The shortcut was never, ever worth the price.
So as we wrap up this explainer, we're left with this ultimate lingering thought. The Chalavai is just an absolute masterclass in folklore. It warns us about the deceptive nature of easy ways out, especially when we're at our absolute most vulnerable. It preys on sheer exhaustion and that desperate human need for a quick fix. So I'm going to leave you with this. When your defenses are completely stripped away, and a voice in the dark offers you exactly what you've been praying for, would you follow? Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, guys. Stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next one.